Greetings. You're not going to get the message from Sunday worship because the scouts are going to be delivering that, and they're going to be sharing in worship. It's Scouting Sunday, and we thank goodness for Stacy Feehan. She and I did a bunch of work to get this service put together, and she's going to do all the work on Sunday as I am going to be getting ready and out in Colorado about to start our hike. Our hike is going to start on Monday morning early. And so thank you to Stacy Feehan for that, because it has been a long couple of weeks and I need to get out and see what God has created and get a tiny little ounce of peace and quiet. And I'm really looking forward to that. And I'm so thankful for the scouts for helping me with that. That being said, I had just as much work this week because I have a different worship service I had to prepare for. And that is worship at the Rural Ministry Conference on Saturday. And so I'm going to give you a taste of that today instead of Sunday's worship, because there's no way I can tell you what they're going to talk about because it's not me. I can tell you what hymns they're going to sing and some of that kind of stuff, but I don't know what the message is going to be. I will tell you, though, that on Saturday at the Rural Ministry Conference, we have a theme of drought. We're going to talk about drought like it is for us in these past few years in Iowa, but also a drought of spirit, a drought in rural ministry, and thinking about how rural ministry matters and is essential to our ministry here in Iowa, but also in the United Methodist Church. You know, especially in America, rural ministry is at the very heart of Methodism. And, you know, we've been talking about Methodism now for a month. And rural ministry is right there in the heart of it. This does not stray from where we have been the rest of the month. So here's our scripture reading, which oftentimes comes around every 3 years in the lectionary if we choose the gospel stream for that year. Comes up in the lectionary during Lent. So this is kind of one of those rare readings we don't get a lot. From Luke chapter 13. Jesus told this parable. A man owned a fig tree planted in his vineyard. He came looking for fruit on it and found none. So he said to his gardener, "Look, I've come looking for fruit on this fig tree for 3 years now and have found none. Cut it down. Why should it continue depleting the soil's nutrients?" The gardener responded, "Lord, give it 1 more year, and I will dig around it and fertilize it. Maybe it'll produce next year. But then if not, then you can cut it down." This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. I love this passage that comes around every once in a while. I imagine that because I've seen the original language of this passage, you know, it really says we're going to throw manure on it. You know what I'm talking about. And we'll see. It's really going to stink, but we'll see if something happens. But I love this approach because this is what we need to do. This is who we are. And I've felt in this drought we've had in the past couple of years, I have felt this attitude rising through society. Hopefully it's not embraced you guys yet. I haven't seen it too terribly badly in the church. But I have definitely seen it in wider society. And I see it rising up in us. This attitude of, well, if it's not working, we're just going to get rid of it. We don't have time for this. There's a place for that. But there's also a place and a time for us to say, I know it's not working, but maybe it's not working because we haven't been taking good enough care of it. That's what's going on in this passage. We can't control drought, but there are some things we can control. We can control what we grow. We can control when we plant it. We can control whether or not we care for it between the time that it's planted and the time that it's harvested. What farmer would spend gobs of money planting fields and then just leave them with no care, no concern whatsoever until harvest, hoping for the best? Even when there's things that aren't under farmers' control, I have seen them out checking the soil humidity, checking to see how much water is really there. Even if there's nothing that they can do about it, they can't make rain. But tending carefully to things helps us care for them better. It helps them bear more fruit. It helps them be more productive. And if we're not caring for things, well, who is? And what is that saying about our commitment to our work? Rural ministry is a lot like that. So it has been literally years since we've had a big rural ministry event in our conference. Wrap yourself around that. We live in Iowa. There's not a place in Iowa that's not rural. Even places that like to think of themselves as more urban, like Cedar Rapids and Des Moines, and maybe even Council Bluffs or Davenport, or maybe even Sioux City. Places that consider themselves a little bit more urban. They're still not urban. It's still Iowa. We still are deep down inside rooted in the rural. And to ignore that and neglect that is like planting a fig tree and leaving it and just coming back year after year to check and see if there's fruit. We're not taking care of it. We're not loving it. We don't talk to it to make it grow. We don't. Can you imagine the conversation this gardener would have, though? Hey, buddy, you get your act together, or I am covering you in manure. We're not doing that. We're not loving and caring for the creation. If this owner was really truly worried about how this tree was wasting nutrients, well, maybe he would do something about it. But he doesn't. He just throws his hands up in the air and says, get rid of it. That, my friends, is kind of what it looks like out there in the world right now. I hate to say it, but post-COVID, this is the attitude. The attitude of the owner, not the gardener. The attitude of, well, if it's not okay, someone messed it up and we need to just get rid of it. You notice he didn't say, get rid of it and let's put some beans there. Or get rid of it and we'll put in a pomegranate tree. Sounds nice, doesn't it? It's the Middle East. Get rid of it, and I'm going to start an apiary. Now the owner doesn't say anything like that. Instead, he says, well, it's sucking up the nutrients from the soil. Just cut it down. Maybe I'll come back every year and just see what happens after you cut it down. But the gardener still remembers that seed. The gardener still remembers the kids who used to run around in the sanctuary, who have since moved away. The gardener still remembers where that tree came from and how long it's been there. It remembers a time before COVID. It remembers a time before the conference was talking about disaffiliation. It remembers a time before 9/11. It remembers a time before. Whatever it was that shook us, that caused us to have an attitude that things are disposable in God's creation. The gardener remembers. And he says, maybe the problem is not the tree. Maybe I need to be a better caretaker. There it is, World Church. There's our dilemma, our struggle, our epic joy and failure wrapped into one little package. Oh, it would be so easy to blame the world for the state of the World Church. To say, oh, it's all because of population decline and because of urbanization. People are moving away, and that's the problem. Oh, it's because of rising costs and aging church buildings. That's the problem. Oh, it's because people aren't as committed as they used to be. And we've lost our values and our sense of obligation. That's the problem. I mean, we could try to blame it on that. It's because parents are busy and they prioritize sports over church. Right? There's things we can blame stuff on. In fact, I feel like we've done it. But what if, just hear me out for a minute. What if the real issue is that we could learn to be better caretakers? What if there are some things we can do? If there are some things we can be that will bring us closer to God's kingdom than neglect will? What if we could tend this tree? Oh, maybe we let some go already. But they're gone now. We can't bring them back once they're cut down. Oh, we really had some issues. And we have some blame, and we can blame some other people and other things. But what if we could rise and nurture? What if we can be throwers of manure instead of spreading it the way we usually choose to? I'm telling you, I have my moments. I bet you do too. When we can really spread manure with the best of them. But we sure don't hit any plants. It's time to get out our shovels and dig around the tree. Because there are some things we can do. There is some ownership that we can take that will bring the church to a place of fruitfulness. And maybe it's not going to be as fruitful as we always dreamed it would be. Maybe it's just one tree instead of 5,000 that we expect to have bear fruit. Maybe our crowds are smaller, our giving is less, our buildings aren't as fancy. But maybe there is fruit that still is waiting to be nurtured. And praying that we finally get our job done. The owner comes by and says, "Get rid of it. Because when I check it, it's not good." But the gardener, you remember. You remember that seed you loved. That little sprout of hope that came up. That's that tree that grew for years before anybody could expect fruit on it. And it's not too late for it. It's not too late for the church that's not bearing fruit. It's not too late for the people in our lives that aren't bearing fruit. It's not too late for us when we're not bearing fruit. But for goodness sakes, if we don't nurture it now, nothing will happen. And eventually it will be next year, or the year after, or the year after. But eventually, the time will come for that tree to be cut down. If we don't do something now. This is our season. This is our time as a rural church to say, we are not wasting the soil in which we have been planted. We are not wasting the nutrients. We are not wasting God's time. We are not wasting our energy. But instead, we are nurturing. And if it's not enough, we'll do it a little bit more. Because God never gives up on us. And we're not ready to give up on ourselves, on our kids, on our grandkids. We're not ready to give up on our church, on our community, on the souls of the people we love. It is time. It is time for us to do what we do best, rural church. It's time for us to get choring. Because this is going to be one amazing harvest if we start nurturing now. May our church flourish. And may it happen with us instead of in spite of us. Be the gardener who remembers. Amen.